live. GM, everybody, can I see a GM in the chat? Is the chat on Zoom working for everybody? Let's see. People are joining. Okay, YouTube seems to go. We are live on YouTube and we are live on Zoom as well. We'll just wait for a couple more seconds until people join and then we can kickstart this session. I'm happy to have Nestor giving this session on the front end session, and we'll learn so much more about how to kickstart your application on the front end and learn a lot of good things. So let's wait for more couple of seconds. So we have a GM on YouTube, GM on Zoom. Nice to see. Okay, I think that's that. We can start the session. So GM everybody, or good night, depending on where you tune in. Welcome to the last workshop of day 2 of the hackathon. Just a quick recap as we did with the previous sessions. Yesterday, we had our kickoff ceremony, and then we had our first workshop where you learned about getting started with Starknet. And today we had introduction to the Dojo stack and building effective AI agents. Now, remember, these recordings are available on the BittleBox YouTube channel, so you can access them there, and including this session as well. For today's workshop, we'll learn about scaffolding decentralized apps on Starknet. And in this session, Nestor will show you how to build a front-end application using Scaffold Stark. Nestor has been an OG in the Starknet ecosystem and a software developer. He's been participating in the Basecamp as a teacher, and he'll be able to show us how to leverage simple and composable React hooks for the session and much more. I think with that being said, Nestor, you can take the mic and you can kick the session off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you to all. So let me start by sharing my screen. Let me share this screen. All right. Thank you, everyone. So let's jump to the workshop. In this workshop, we're going to be working on scaffolding dApp on Starknet. About the workshop, we're going to be talking about a little bit of the requirements, the front-end libraries, and the toolkit that we're going to be using today, which is Scaffold Stark. We're going to be doing a little bit of live coding. I'm going to be doing a couple of comparisons between the different libraries that are in the ecosystem, in the Starknet ecosystem for UX. And at the end, probably I'm going to be sharing some additional resources. I'm Nestor Bonilla, and you can find me pretty much everywhere as 0x Nestor. Yeah, so after this workshop, happy to continue the conversation. Also, have in mind that, for example, this workshop is the first one that we're going to be giving using Scaffold. So happy to hear from you folks if you want maybe an additional workshop on I don't know, a more advanced project, maybe doing a staking application or something like a DEX or something, you know, more advanced. Given that this is a workshop for a hackathon, I wanted to give you the you know, all the tools necessary for you to understand how this toolkit works and how you can start from today to understand how it works and how can you start to ideate your process and how, you know, you need to plug the different puzzles. So we are going to be doing just a little bit of refreshment. In previous sessions, probably, or also I would recommend you folks to see the upcoming Basecamp. We are doing Basecamp editions pretty often. So after you understand on the foundations of Starknet, pretty much at the end, you conclude with, you know, building your smart contract. That smart contract is written in Cairo. And then when you complete that portion at the end, you create an instance of a contract, and you have three things. You have the compile to Sierra code, you have the ABI, which is the application binary interface, and you have the class hash. You need those three things in order to interact together with the contract address, of course, right? In order to interact with the contract on a chain. It could be DevNet, it could be Sepolia, or it could be mainnet. So once you have those three things, you're ready to go to work on your UX portion, okay? And then I was thinking a lot on how to do this workshop because on Basecamp, we go from a more kind of middle ground in terms of UX abstraction. And what I mean by that is that I created this slide in order to explain you how I see it. Let's say that you want to understand the more fundamental basics on how you can interact with the Starknet chain, right? You tell me, hey, Nestor, I want to understand the fundamental, the basic, and then on top of that, I want to continue elaborating my abstraction. So if that's what you want to do, I will recommend you to go directly to Starknet JS in order to understand how it works. Okay, so Starknet JS is this JavaScript library where you're gonna be interacted with the nodes, and basically you're gonna create all these interactions from the very basic. Now, if you tell me, hey, I kind of like it, but I will prefer something a little bit more abstract. Something that, for example, I'm going to be creating a React application. And then I figured it out that once I understand Starknet.js, I need to build a couple of hooks that I will need to build every time that I'm going to be doing one project in Starknet. And if you tell me that, I will recommend you probably, okay, let's go with Starknet React, because those are some foundational hooks that you will integrate into your UX project. And those are going to be like how to connect with a wallet, how to connect, how to do a read, how to do a write. But those are more a little bit more abstract, but not too abstract. Okay. And for that, I have a very good workshop that I have given before. So I can share with you folks here on the comments. Let me put it here. In this one, you will be able to see different branches that I have given this workshop on Basecamp, where you will understand from a very detailed perspective on how you can start to integrate these hooks. But then I was thinking, and Robert was telling me, yes, that's cool, but on this one, we want to explain people how to start to build, the project right now, because this is a 2 weeks hackathon. And for that, I will say, what if you go to Scaffold Stark? Okay. And what do I mean by that? Scaffold Stark is this toolkit where everything is going to be bundled in a way that you just either run an npx or you're gonna clone this repo, and then you can start from the get-go to just work on your project idea. So that's what we are gonna be doing right now. Let's start to code. Do you have any question right now? If yes, just let me know, raise a hand.
So
If
far, so
not,
good. If there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the YouTube chat or in Zoom, and I'll let Nestor know.
perfect. Okay, then let's start code. So the first thing is, of course, go to the documentation of Scaffold Stark. Let me put that here. This is going to be the main documentation. Okay, if you see here, This is not just a hook, a library of hooks like Starknet React. This is more like a toolkit that use a bunch of tools like Next.js, Starknet.js, Scarp, Starknet React, Starknet Foundry, and TypeScript. All that bundle for you to speed up your development process. Okay, now, first things first. If you're on your computer, you might want to go to your console. Let me increase the font a bunch. Maybe that's good, Robert?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's good.
Perfect. So first, you will see on the installation, you can go quick start installation. You will see a bunch of requirements because, of course, you are installing a toolkit. You're going to be using a toolkit, right? As I mentioned, you're going to be using all these Next.js, Starknet.js, Scarp, Starknet React, Starknet Foundry. Okay, then um, here you might want to have these versions of these different tools. So for example, Scarp, you need to have 2.9.2. Starting at DevNet, that's the local chain that we're going to be running on your computer. It must have this version and so on and so forth. So for that, you can run this code. Let's run it here. So we're good with Scarp. They mentioned 2.9.2. We're good. Then Starknet DAppNet, which is the local chain, it's 2.2, 2.3. We're good. And Foundry, Starknet Foundry, they mentioned we should have 0.34. We're good. Cool. Now, once we have that, let's start the code. You have two options from the get-go. You either gonna clone the repo, which is good, right? You just do a git clone and then go to the repo and then you do the jar install, or you can use npx. So with npx, you know that you're gonna be uh, doing all that process automatically, and you can add the latest in order to using the latest version. Right now, I don't remember the version, but let's go that way. You just need to use npx create stark add latest. So what it's gonna do, it's gonna ask you two things. First, it's your project name, and then it's gonna ask you for uh, what project that you want to do, something related to Starknet or something related to Dojo. So Dojo, as far as I understand, that's going to be another workshop either today or tomorrow. Okay, so let's name it Winter Hackathon, right? So that's going to be your project name, and then what framework? Starknet native. Boom. Then they ask you, do you want to install the packages automatically? And why not? Yes. So this, it's gonna clone the repo, it's gonna change the name under the hood, and finally it's gonna install all the dependencies. Once that's ready, we are ready to, for example, do something like cursor or code if you use VS Code. Let's use cursor, Winter Hackathon, and we have that here. Let me increase the font if that's enough. Okay, so what we have here? We have here a monorepo. Okay, this monorepo has two packages, which is Next.js and Starknet Foundry. So of course, as in Foundry, it's gonna be it will contain all the related to the smart contracts. You are gonna create the contracts here. You're gonna deploy the contracts either on DevNet. In this workshop, we're gonna be using DevNet or Sepolia, or you're ready and you concluded your hackathon project, so you launch it to mainnet. You can do it from here. And then Next.js is going to be the front end application where uh, it uses Starknet, React, and all these cool libraries into just one. And both, that's the cool thing, they are integrated between each other. Okay, so we can go a little bit on the package JSON. Here you will see, of course, the two packages that are in this mono repo, and you can see a little bit about the scripts that we are going to be using. For sure, we're going to be using chain, compile, deploy, and start. Those are kind of the ones that we're going to be using. If you, for example, you create your project, right? And then you say, hey, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to deploy and launch this online. I don't want to have it just on my computer. So of course, you're going to be doing the deploy. You're going to be selecting the network. So yarn deploy dash dash network mainnet, and then you're going to be doing your Vercel. With that, it's going to integrate that with your Vercel account, and you're going to be deploying that. Okay, so first code that we're going to be using, it's, for example, yarn chain. What this is going to be doing, this is going to run one local chain on your computer. So why would you need that? Let's say that now you are going to be having a 2-week period where you're going to be exploring different ideas on what are you going to be doing, and how to tweak it into put your magic on it. So probably you don't want to deploy this to testnet every time. So for that, it's already bundled here. You have one testnet chain with predefined accounts. You can inject that into, for example, Bravos or Argent. You just inject the private key, you connect to DevNet, and you're good to go. Also, these accounts are pre-funded with ETH and Stark. It's like 1,000 for each of those. Cool. So whenever we're going to be deploying, now we're going to be deploying to DevNet. Okay. Now once we have that, we can go to the project that is related to contracts, right? We can go and add a new contract. So for that, you can go, let me increase a little bit more. Is that good, or should I increase a little bit more, folks?
I think it looks good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So here you will see on the contracts folder, you will see stores, and then here you will see two files, lib and your contract. So your contract, it's the default Cairo contract that comes with Scaffold. And then this is, pretty much a contract that use a little bit of ERC20, and then it change the greetings. It's a cool entry point. Then you have libcairo. So in this one, pretty much you just need to import a new module. That module is going to be any additional contract. So in this case, we're going to be adding a new one. Let's say counter.cairo. So let me go here. We are going to be using this contract because this is not a Cairo session. So I'm going to be explaining this very briefly. So in a nutshell, this is a contract. This is a simple counter that integrates pretty much what we wanted to explore in this entry workshop with Scaffold, which are read functions, write functions, events, and a little bit of ownership. Okay, so pretty much we have the traits here. We're gonna be having two functions: get counter, increase counter, and reset counter. Okay, we are gonna be having a storage of counter and ownable. We are gonna be having a couple of events, counter increase, counter decrease, and ownable event. A couple of struct, counter increase, counter decrease. These are related to the events that we're gonna be emitting when we're gonna be calling the functions. Then, of course, we have the constructor. In this constructor, we have just two parameters, right? Init value and owner. Those are going to be two values that we're going to be passing to the constructor. And then when we're going to be doing the implementation of the functions, these are pretty much basic functions: get counter, increase counter. This is a +1 only. And at the end, we are going to be emitting the events that I explained before. The same happened with decrease and related to reset counter. Basically, we are asserting that only the owner can do that reset. Pretty much a basic contract. Now, where the magic has come from with Scaffold, it's that you, in order to just deploy it, instead of, for example, creating a new script in order to deploy that contract and so on and so forth, just put your contract here, go to lib.cairo. Here, we will need to import the module. That's going to be counter. That's it related to the Cairo portion. And then you will need to go to script TS. So here you will have a couple of helpers and scripts. The root, it's going to be deploy.ts. So here you will find a couple of examples on how to deploy contracts. And what they did a great job is by putting different examples. For example, if you're going to be deploying a contract that has a couple of parameters, if they add more options, if they have no parameters, and so on and so forth. So by default, they are deploying your contract, which is this contract that I explained before. But let's say that we want to launch, we can do two things. We can do either replace this, or we can launch multiple contracts because we are going to be using DevNet, right? So DevNet is like your local chain. So we can just copy this and we can name it deploy script 2, and then the contract is going to be counter. And the only thing that we will need to do is to change the constructor. So if you remember, I mentioned that we have in the constructor two parameters, right? Init value and owner. And one thing to mention is that I'm gonna be putting init value 10. Let's launch it with 10. And then the owner, we need to pass that address. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting which address? Well, I'm putting the first address of the predefined accounts that we have with DevNet. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm doing here. And then on the script, let's just add dot deploy script 2. Oh, sorry, it's then. So basically, we're going to be deploying your contract, and then we're going to be deploying counter, and then we're going to be doing all the good stuff that are already there. So one thing that you have in mind, that you need to have in mind, is that with Scaffold, you need to run different terminals. Why? Because if, for example, I kill this control C, basically I'm killing the chain, right? So if you are gonna be running with yarn start, and then you kill the chain. Basically, you will have some errors in the UX because there will be no contract found, right? Right. So because of that, you're gonna be running a chain on a terminal, and then let's click on a new one, and you're gonna be doing um, now the deployment. So for that, we are gonna be doing yarn deploy network and DevNet. So what are we doing here? If you go to package.json, we have the deploy. So basically here, we are saying, hey, we are going to be running Yarn Workspace as a Foundry deploy. So if you want to understand a little bit more how this works, let's go to the Starknet Foundry project and go here to package, we have deploy, and then this is no more than a script, a TypeScript script that is going to be running deploy wrapper. And then here you will find that there are a couple of parameters that are expected and others that are by default, and so on and so forth. So basically, that's kind of you can drill the project in order to have a more deep understanding of it. But let's go and just deploy our contract. Just do that. Now, what is going to be happening, it's going to compile your contract. It's going to compile counter, and it's going to be deploying that into DevNet. Okay. So we're going to be waiting. It should be fast. Okay, that's it. We are deploying contract at this address. We're going to be deploying counter and this at this address, and pretty much that's it. Now I want to explain about what happened here. In one hand, we modified, as I mentioned, the deploy contract. We saw a couple of changes here in local DevNet because we are using DevNet. And you might see right now that we haven't touched at all Next.js project, but you see some changes occur here. And that's the part that I was mentioned that Scaffold pretty much bundles uh, the Foundry portion together with the UX portion. And what I mean by that is that if you go here, there is a new folder called contracts. Well, not new, but in the folder called contracts, it modified this file called deploy contracts. So if we go here, we will find pretty much all the information that we need in order to work the UX portion. We will see, okay, from the deploy contracts, first, we're going to show you the ones that are in this chain. This chain is the local chain, DevNet. Then we will have two contracts. We will have your contract and counter. So for counter, for example, we will have an address. That's going to be the address. Then we're going to have the ABI, as I mentioned, and then the class hash. Okay, so those are the three things that we need in order to start to work with this. Now, I wanted to pause, and I wanted for you folks to know if you have any questions so far. Right now, we're going more into the UX portion.
There was a question on YouTube, but maybe this will be covered in the upcoming minutes. How do you implement connecting a wallet to web app and letting the agent use your connected wallet? I guess he's referring to like an AI agent, probably. But most important question is like how like do you do like the wallet web connection?
Okay, so there are great questions related to agent. I think that we're gonna be having another session just for that. But related this great toolkit, basically, that's a good question. We have two things that we're gonna be exploring. One is the folder for hooks, this is a great folder. We're going to be exploring that. And then, of course, we have different other components. So related to the wallet connections and so on and so forth, they created a couple of components that you're going to be using, and those are like faucet, for example, or footer, or header, or how to switch theme. Now, that's a good segue in order to show you the UX. So what you're going to be doing is just yarn start. Again, you don't kill the other one, right? Because on one, you launch the network, the local network. On the second one, you deploy this. Yeah, you can kill this one. It's not necessary. And then on the third one, you will be running the Next.js project. Now, let me go to here and put this locale. We're going to be running, we're going to the UX portion. Okay. So for example, I want to go very briefly through this. So for example, in the components, you have, for example, things like switch theme. It's something that, hey, I want a cool project. It looks good on the UX, but I don't want to spend like 1 hour, integrating all those things with Tailwind, CSS, and so on and so forth. And they did it. It's ready to go. So for example, you can just go here, localhost, and then you can switch the theme, for example, things like that, or the wallet or faucet, for example, in order to add some funds to a specific wallet, configure contract, or uh, a widget in order to see live the price of Ethereum or the connected addresses, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a good segue in order to start to explain on other workshops that we have provided, for example, on Basecamp, and those orders were related about, for example, just Starknet React. So what I want to explain you folks is that all this, going back to this idea of levels of abstraction here, is that Scaffold, it's kind of the 103 level of abstraction, right? Because it creates a toolkit that everything is bundled, but it's on top of Starknet React hooks, which is on top of Starknet JS library, right? So imagine like a ladder. So that's pretty much what they're doing. And a coding representation of this, it's for example, in this component, for example, in connected addresses. In connected addresses, they are using Scaffold Stark, and they are using also use account. But if we go here on use accounts, they have a hook that is wrapping in a very in a more simple way, I would say, but more abstracted, uh, Starknet React. And what I mean by that is that they are exporting this hook, but at the core they are using Starknet React, right? So basically, I don't want to speak by them, but what in by code, basically the whole idea is that pretty much what they're trying to do is to speed up development process, development flow, and make your life easier as a developer, abstracting a bunch of hooks that are already, in different other libraries, and bundle everything for you to just have an idea, build on that, ship. Okay, now, I think that was a segue into hooks. So basically here, aside use account, which is kind of not too much of an abstraction per se, but the ones that are a good as abstraction are the hooks that are inside Scaffold Stark, where you will see a bunch of hooks. So for example, you can have well, the one that we're going to be using mostly are going to be use deploy contract info. So on this one, it's different hooks that are using generic types in order to pass the less parameters to these hooks in order to get the information from uh, the different files that are on this project. So what I mean by that is, for example, on use deploy contract info, we're using generic types, but at the end, we're going to be passing a contract name. So that contract name, instead of, for example, passing an address together with the name of the contract here, you just need to pass a contract name. And how does all the bundle under the hood? It's because you already use Starknet Foundry, right, to deploy that contract, to create that instance, that create uh, update this file that I mentioned, deploy contracts. So because of that, it knows what contracts to which address has been created that instance. So because of that, you just need to pass that name in order to for this hook to know that information, and then they leverage on that in order to use that hook. So we're going to be using a couple of these hooks. Now, let me show you a little bit of the UX that you have from the get-go, and those are the bug contracts. If you go to this tab, basically, you will be seeing the different contracts that have been deployed. So by default, they use ETH and Stark contract. But then, for example, here you will see your contract. Your contract is the one that is coming by default here. Starting at Foundry, source. This one is the one that is by default. So you can set gradings, withdraw, transfer ownership, and so on and so forth. And then this counter is the one that we are adding here. And then you can go to right. You can see on the left, pretty much the read functions, get counter, owner, or the variables. So for example, here we can first connect with a wallet, right? And here's another thing. This is all from the get-go. You don't need to configure all this, right? You can just, it just work, right? As I mentioned, if you want to understand how to do this and so on and so forth, it was this sort of project that repo that I shared with you before. So for example, here in Connect Wallet, you have three different options. You have Bravos, Argent. You can, for example, connect with Bravos and then put the wallet into DevNet mode in order to connect with DevNet, or you can use the burner wallet. Those are that's going to show you the predefined addresses. And what do I mean by that? Do you remember that here? Here, yeah, we have it still. Do you remember that I told you that they have three predefined accounts? That's not this toolkit. That's DevNet, right? So this is a local network. So if you go to the first one, 0x64b4, 0xb4, 64b4. So that's that one. And if you remember, we set the owner um, at as that address in order to reset the counter. Okay. So for example, we can increase here from here. Um, you can see here, you can decrease, or you can reset, right? Okay, cool. Let's just try this, and then let's say we're gonna be disconnecting and we're gonna be connected to another address, let's say the second one. So this could actually increase, but it won't work. It won't work when I will try to reset, right? Why? Because it's not the first one, okay? So that's it related the what you have from the get-go. Please let me know if you have any question. If not, what we're gonna be doing is to work on the home, on the the first page, this one, and we're gonna be starting to interact with it, and we're gonna be um, exploring a little bit more what will be the differences between the hooks from Starknet React, which could be kind of the more raw hooks versus the ones that these folks created. Very, very good. Uh, any question? No question?
I think we're good on questions, so we can get into the next topic.
Oh, okay, cool. Now we're not going to be dealing with Starknet Foundry. That's the contract that it's already deployed. Now we're going to be going to the Next.js. We are going to be going to app, and then we will have a layout, and then in the layout we have page, and then this is where we're going to be working on. Okay, let me reduce this. So this is pretty much this page. Okay, now let's start by, for example, what can we do here? Let me just pretty much clean this portion. Let me remove this. Um, okay, we are pretty much clean now. Now let's, for example, have a block number. So in block number, we can have just the block number. This is just HTML, right? HTML with some classes in order to follow the style of Scaffold. Um, but what we want to show here is what's the block number right now, okay? So for that, we will need to get some data from the hooks, and then the hook that we're gonna be using, it's one from Starknet React. So here we're gonna be saying something like step one, it's not deploy, it's block number. Okay, so here we will be using this hook. This hook, it's from Starknet React Core, which means Starknet React. What we're gonna be doing here, it's getting the latest block from the chain in which we are connected to. Now, if you folks wants to, you know, of course you will need to know, okay, I don't want to, I want to see what additional hooks are present, or can I explore more hooks? You will need to go to this website, the documentation. Let me put it here. So here you will see all the hooks that are available for Starknet React. So in this case, we were using use block number. You can go to search, and let's say that you want to read more things related to block. So you will see use block number or use block, for example. And then specifically, we want just to know the block number. So probably use block, it's going to return a little bit more data. So we don't want that in this case. So let's go with use block number. So here you will see the hook, you will see a description of it, how you need to use it, and what type of data it will return, together with the arguments that you might pass in order to return what you want. And the returns also are described here. You can get data, error, reset, status, is error, is pending, is success, fetch status, and so on and so forth. So basically, you right now might ask yourself, okay, why do I need so many things as a return? And that will depend on your UX. Okay, definitely. So for example, if you want to have a very customized front end where if you launch a transaction and then you want to know what is the status of that transaction, you might want to get all this. But guess what? That's a cool thing that these folks from Scaffold, they have done, and they have created this additional level of abstraction, as I mentioned. But for this one, this is kind of very basic. So uh, that's pretty much the hook, how you use it. And then if you want just to plug it into your application, basically you just need to replace here, and then we will say last block. Of course, this is gonna be DevNet. So the block, I think is 2 or something at the use client, of course, because we are gonna be using hooks. We need to go to the top, use client. These folks, for example, is just Next.js stuff. Okay, cool. We have the block number already. It's 11. We're reading that. Okay, this is one hook that is just from Starknet React, and then we're gonna be doing a comparison between Starknet React and Scaffold. Let's go to the second one. The second one, it's what if you want to read the balance, right? Read the balance of the address that is being connected. So let's go step 2. Let's call it balance. And then you have 2 options. You have the option for Starknet React, which is this one. Here, we will be using use account and use balance. Let's go first to understand that on the documentation, use balance. Here, it fetch the balance for the provided address and token. If no token is provided, the native currency is used. Okay, this is how you use it, import, and then you use the hook and you get the data and error. The data, it's gonna get a value, decimal and simple, and formatted. And the arguments could be a token, but of course, if there's no address here, it defaults to the changed native currency. Also, address, watch, block, identifier, and you will see a bunch of parameters. And return, it's going to be data, error, reset, status, and all these other additional things. Okay, so this is how you might want to use the hook if you just want to use the Starknet React. Okay, and let me show you how it should look. Let me go to add a couple of HTML code just to see it here. Okay, account balance, let's here. Okay, this is just HTML, right? With styling. And then we are gonna be putting balance data and then, yeah, balance data. We can use the formatted one. Of course, right now, there's no number. Why? Because there is no wallet connected to it. Okay, good. Now we have the balance just using the hooks from Starknet React. Okay, but probably if you're using Scaffold, you want to maybe make it more abstracted. And this is again, this is optional, right? They created a bunch of hooks, very well designed, but then it's optional, and it's also related to the use case, right? Maybe you can have more customized hooks, and then you can do a PR, I guess. I'm assuming here, and then you can do a PR, and you're going to be increasing these customized hooks in Scaffold. Okay, let's go to the other way to do this. Let's say, okay, we don't want to use this. We want to use the hooks that are already here. Okay, now what we're gonna be using instead of these two hooks, which are use count and use balance, let's just use scaffold read contract. Okay. One thing we probably we still need to use this one, the user address, because this is very basic. So instead of using use balance, you can use scaffold read contract, and here you can pass just the contract name, the function name, and the argument. Okay, maybe you here see a very similar approach, but believe me, on the right one, it's more abstract. Okay, so we can easily just replace this by this. And here we will need to format this. And the way we can format this, it's just by a number. Okay, let's see. Not a number. Why? Because it's not connected. Burner wallet, the first one. Well, that's it. Okay, of course, this is a big number because we need to, you know, the 18 decimals and so on and so forth. And we can make it a little bit beautiful later, but it's just, you know, divided and then so on and so forth. But it works, and this works two ways, right? Either the hooks from Starknet React or the hooks that are created here. Let's go a little bit more on this hook. So basically, these hooks, as I mentioned, they are here on the hooks folder, and then it's use scaffold read contracts. Here they are using generic types. You just pass the contract name, the function name, the arguments, and additional parameters, and they will read from. You know, I already explained that. Cool. Now, what additional thing can we do? We can do a read counter, for example, and then in this read counter, let me go here, step number 3. Step 3, read counter, and then here again, we will have one way for using standard React hooks. And for that, let me go with this one. Here, I wanted to use this one because I wanted to explain to you folks how this is easier to use deploy contract info. If we don't use these hooks, for example, what we will need to do is to go to app, for example, maybe not in app, or maybe here in Next.js, and then we will need to have a folder called ABI, and then you will need to create, I don't know, ABI TS, and then here you will need to export cons ABI, and something like that, okay? And then you will need to get the ABI going to Voyager. For example, if you deploy to testnet, and then you're gonna be placing that ABI here, and then on your app, you're gonna be on the page, you're gonna be importing that, and so on and so forth. But with this hook, it's easy. It's just use deploy contract info, you pass the name of the contract, and then you have that information here, ready for you to use other hooks that you might want. Starknet, I'm just importing. Okay, cool. Now, we have the data from this contract in this function name, get counter. So with that, that's pretty much how you will do it with Starknet React. Let me put a little bit of front end on HTML in order to explain to you how that should look. Okay, go here, here. Let's go here. Okay, cool. Contract counter. We have a current value of 1, and that's the one that we want to update. And we have a small button with refresh. Cool. That's it. Now, how are we going to change this? We are going to be doing read data. Read data. We're going to be replacing this. Read data. Boom. Current value. And then what else? The button of refresh. Let me replace this. Cool. Now, you need to now, well, this will work. This will get the number that we're getting here on read data. And then let's move forward with the pretty much what I want to show you folks and how you can use this with the hooks only from Scaffold. Let me go go here, read counter. Okay. Instead of doing this, you might want to comment this and just use this. Okay, there are no arguments, and we are just going to be using use scaffold react contract. We're going to be passing the contract name, the function name, and there are no arguments. So that's pretty much what we're going to be doing. We might remove this and counter data. We might want to convert it to string, and we have that here. Current value 4. And why? Because we have it in 4. So if we want, for example, to update that, let's go to partner wallet, let's connect, let's increase. Now it's 5 and go back to home. Ready. Current value 5. Okay. So I hope this is giving you a clear understanding on you can use both. You can use Starknet React hooks or the hooks that are created here. But for some general things, it will be easier to use the ones that are being created here. If your use case is very customized, probably you might want to go back to the less abstracted one and create your personal hook. But of course, you will have a great foundation here. So now let's go to another step. Let's add. How are we on time, Robert? Are we good?
We'll still have a couple of more minutes left, so I'm not sure how long it will take, but
Okay,
just let's say for 5 more minutes.
perfect. Okay, so folks, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna be um, putting this into GitHub for you folks to understand a little bit more. Of course, there will be more examples here, but it's the same. You are just gonna be using these hooks. Now let me go to another one. Let me go to how, for example, can you do write one. Let me go to step 4 and reset counter, for example. So in reset counter, these will be the things that you will need to have to do in order to work with Starknet React. Of course, we will need to have an object of contract. And then once you have it, you will need to populate the transactions. And then you will need to have a call with use memo. And then at the end, you will need to use the hook, use send transaction in order to set all the transactions that you created and send it to the chain. Okay. But if you want to use the hooks here from Scaffold, then you might want to just use this. Use scaffold write contract. You're going to be passing the contract name, the function name, the arguments. In this case, there are no arguments, and you're going to have a send async sync, and you're going to be passing reset counter data. So that's the thing that you're going to be plugging to your button. Boom, that's it. It's going to send the transaction, and it's going to pop up the wallet and so on and so forth. If you are using Argent or Bravos and you're using a different chain than DevNet. Cool. Then the last one, and I would say this is very considerable in terms of time that you're going to be taking if you want to follow the more traditional route, or the one that I explained before on Basecamp, and it's events. So I think this is step 5. Yeah, step 5, events. In order to make it work, or how I made it work, it was this code. So basically here, I had to create a new RPC provider. Then I set a hook uh, for events. Then I had to check the last block reference, and for that use ref, this hook from React. Then I had to use callback. So basically here, what I did was a mechanism how to get all the events from the chain and then start to read from them and kind of have a comparison. And at the end, basically just get the last 5 events once they are filtered. And those are the ones that I was using and putting on the front end. So if you want to understand how all this work, definitely I would recommend you to do it, because it's cool. You kind of understand on a deep level how it works. But if you just want to make it work, you can use another hook, which is use scaffold event history. And here you will have a hook that will expect just a contract name, an event name, from block, since when, and a watch true. It's basically, if it followed the same pattern from Starknet React, it's gonna be reading every block. Okay, so you might wonder, okay, why do I need to use this? Because the thing is that this is the name of the event on the file that was created. Let's do a deep search, and you can see again on the deploy contracts file that the name of this event is this. All this is the complete name for this. Okay, let me go back, and we are almost in events data, and now we are gonna be looking how to show this, right? And let me just go here. Let's go here. Let me remove this. And then we're gonna be having events data. Events data, it's coming from here. Here, what we're doing, it's a map in which by one side, we're gonna be having the index that is gonna be increased by 1 every time. And then on the next column, we're gonna be having the arguments, and I name it counter. Why? Because on the contract, if we go to Starknet Foundry contract, then source counter, let me see, what is the event? Here. The event, for example, when I increase this counter increase, it's gonna follow this struct, and then in this struct, we're gonna be passing that name, and U32 name counter. And that's why we are using that here, arguments, counter to string. Now, let's see how it looks. And we can see here all the events that have been passing here. So for example, we see here that if we want to add additional one, we can go to the bug contract, we can connect to the burner wallet, let's say the first one, then we're gonna go to write, we're gonna increase the counter to 6, then let's go to the home. Well, that's it, a new one. And I think, folks, that's pretty much it in order for you to understand how this project works. If you, for example, want to understand in a more deep way all these hooks, I strongly recommend you to understand, to go to these hooks, analyze it, and so on and so forth, and see how at the core they use again hooks from Starknet React. Right? It's a wrapper. So that's it with the slides. Then you have, of course, resources. Here, you will probably, that's something that I should have explained before, but the dependencies are HDF, Scarp, Starknet Foundry, and so on and so forth. And there are so many documentation right now for you folks. If you are looking how to understand a little bit more about Kaido, there's a Kaido book, Starknet books, Starknet Foundry, Starknet book, and so on and so forth. But overall, this is a very welcoming community. So if you have any question, just let me know. If you want any more advanced workshop, just let me know. We can make it happen, like a staking application, a DEX application, and so on and so forth. But I hope you had a great workshop and happy coding. Happy hackathon.
Thank you, Nestor. Thank you for this wonderful workshop on scaffolding dApps on Starknet. It's definitely very interesting to implement the front end, and the session is really good. So I hope this was really useful for everybody. If you have any questions about the Scaffold Stark or any front-end development or questions, feel free to join the Beetlebox Discord channel. We have a technical support channel there, and we have mentors ready to assist you. And additional resources and materials are available also on the Beetlebox platform. Make sure to check out each challenge page. They all have their own research resource and materials. And yeah, that's it for this session and for today. Just a reminder, tomorrow's workshop, we have actually two workshops. We have the Argent Telegram Wallet SDK for those who are interested in the Telegram track. And then we have an idea brainstorming and team formation. So for those who are still figuring out their project idea, or even finding need help finding some teams or team members, feel free to join that. We'll give you quite a lot of good tips. Thank you, Nestor, for the fantastic session again. And thank you for all the participants for joining. Happy hacking, and see you tomorrow.